will have to invite again Mehdi to join the session. Hi, Mehdi. How are you doing? I'm really, really happy about this event. Thanks again for letting us this space. The speakers have been super great, and now we have you that are an awesome speaker as well, who is going to talk about the common license agreement for the Ford Foundation grant. The floor is yours, and thank you very much for presenting.
Yeah, it's not over. You will see it's even better to the end. Thank you very much, Monica. Hello, everyone. It's me again, but here because personally with another team, we're working on a project specifically tied to API term of services and from human readability to machine readability, and we will see how we try to make that happen. So I speak from two sides. I'm co-founder and as founder and chairman of Apidays conferences, and also as the founder of Alias. It's a data protection API. So we try to mix the law and the code, and so APIs are the interface in between. So for us, API term of services are extremely important. What we will be talking about today is a current project funded on Open Collective, supported by the Ford Foundation, the Mozilla Foundation, the Open Society Foundation. And the goal is really to think about how a Creative Commons model could work for API term of services. And it could participate maybe to the creation of what we hope, open, safe, and sustainable ecosystem for digital infrastructure. We do that in partnership with InnoCube. So it's a lawyers and specialists dedicated to open source and open ecosystem. They're also the co-creator of the open law community of people who wants to make the law more open and more transparent. So you can go directly on opencollective.com/APIToS-cc to know more, to support, or to to sign up for updates. So first, really, some things have already been shared. So I've shortened the presentation on the intro. But really, the goal of the digital infrastructure is that the world is getting broken down into APIs, and mainly, the services behind the API, the services that we can access to via APIs. It seems that everybody's doing a piece of software that will be useful for someone else. And so people consume software from each other via APIs, via open APIs, to be able to interact with this software, to collect data from the software, or send data, modify data, or delete data to that software. That's really the world we're living in. And I love this quote from the CEO and co-founder of Twilio, one of the main API companies out there. Every part of the stack of a business that the developer might need to build is eventually turning into APIs that the developer can use. This is what we've discovered with the 20th century, with the Industrial Revolution. We have a huge supply chain. Every supplier is doing one thing, specialized into one or few pieces. And the goal of car manufacturer is to assemble different pieces from different suppliers and orchestrate them to build the cars they want. The Ford T from the Henry Ford, he was doing everything himself, but as the market grew, there were opportunity to build some pieces of the car, and that was a standalone company doing just one pieces. And now we have billions of cars. We can have 100,000 of companies doing just one piece to be integrated in other people's car. That's exactly what's happening on the digital infrastructure. Everybody is doing one piece of software, open source or closed source, but to be integrated with others via APIs. That's exactly what we see. So, but there's a big lie of this programmable web. You know, this web where we integrate APIs from other. Actually, it's an inspiration from a huge project called Term of Service Didn't Read, the biggest lie on the web. It's a community that for the last 10 years have described all the term of services with like a red, green, blue, let's say pictograms about like, is this term of services safe or not for platforms? The goal is to try to replicate that for APIs, for API term of services. There are some challenges, but there are also some opportunities that are not with classic term of services. So first, it's also important that the API mindset, a lot of people were considering APIs as just technical interface. And so they were just like this. It was meant for developers, but we've seen that now we use software of someone else that may engage payments, that may engage policy or licenses. We've seen that it also have a legal aspect, and between the technique and the legal aspect, this is really what defines the contract, not just the technical contract, but also the legal contract. But we've seen also that some companies have been built by selling that software to others. So it's also a product for business. So you can understand that at every frontier between technical interface and product, this is how the business is happening. And also on the legal and the product side, it's about reuse. How I can reuse, what do I have the right to reuse data in my product that someone has built or that someone has made? That's the big challenges, and this is why API microservices represent not just the technical aspect or the legal aspect or the product aspect, but the three of them, and we will see that why. Welcome in the as-a-service economy. In other words, the API economy. We use software from other people to focus on the software we deliver for other people. Let's see what's the legal framework, what's the contractual aspect and context for that. And we've seen that there's a huge challenge. Some companies here, Stripe, Twilio, ADN, have been able to build $100 billion business just by providing APIs to others. So the term of services were key in their strategy to be sure that at some point, the relationship with others was clear enough to support scalability. So what we have learned in the past 10 years on API term of services, let's do a quick wrap up about all the challenges we've seen. We've seen that it's a lie so far. It's a lie. It's a lie because actually they changed too much. They changed a lot and many aspects. Few examples here. Google Maps was free, was having a free tier, and now, let's say, they completely changed their business model to make it paying. So all the public sector, for example, who were using Google Maps for a few dozens of calls every day, on a public sector website or a small application or whatever, now have broken in few seconds because just of term of service change and enforcement. They change again afterwards. But, that means something. When you trust someone about a premise and you hear that premise, and be aware when it's changing. Twitter is one of the main examples. So Twitter really killed, when they decided that their business model was advertisements, they really killed all the application using the Twitter API to resyndicate content in other interface, to own the content only on the Twitter desktop application or the Twitter mobile application. Because if you sell ads, you want everybody to look at the ads, and so you need to close the network to be sure people go on the network. So the API aspect, and 100,000 of applications have been broken by that. They tried in 2015, Jack Dorsey tried to apologize and say, we want to reset relation with developers. But again, 2018, Twitter destroyed other, outside application by killing the API they use the most. Again, they were claiming it was mostly for technical reason. These API were old or whatever. But just to say, at some point, the impact was there, and 100,000 of applications have been impacted, and some could not even do the business they were doing before that. So API term of service change, and this great article from Slide called it even the Twitter tragedy. To become a successful company, maybe you'll have to kill the openness that makes it great. Maybe the business model of opening is the closing. Let's see how we can maybe solve that with a better API term of services. LinkedIn is another example. So many startups have complaints about LinkedIn killing their API access, mostly because they were trying to do then the same product than the startup, or maybe they want to acquire them, they want to reduce the value. LinkedIn was claiming that they were not respecting the term of services, but again, when you allow some companies to do something that you don't allow the other companies to do, something is wrong there, and it's about term of services. Another example, Google is really known for killing a lot of services and their API behind it, but this example is extremely important. So Google, when they were doing Google Flight, Google acquired QPX Express API. So it was a service for price comparison algorithm that was most of the airline price comparators use in the world. So QPX, they buy it, and the Federal Trade Commission in the US say, okay, but you have to keep it for 5 years. We don't want just to buy it and you kill it for others. You have to keep it for 5 years for fair competition. So Google kept it for 5 years. Most of the customers believed Google will keep it forever, but actually after 5 years, Google cut it. that was there. It is their right at some point, but again, that's a big sign about that the challenge of API term of services, because all the company did not build their own algorithm. They trusted the algorithm there to be used, and then they funded the growth of a competitor with their money, and that 5 years later they have nothing anymore, right? So just to say you how it can be really challenging. To fix it, at some point, Google on the other side announced enterprise API label to fix product killing reputation. So it seems that some companies are putting the idea of having a label to say, look, this one will be fair, this one will be great, this one will be stable, you can trust it. What does that mean for the one who don't have this label? At least you know, right? So let's see a part of the solution. We will go back to it later. Another example, so you can see their enterprise API label and what they declare about like what's important for them. Another one, not just API terms change, but it's also the performance and SLA. When you use a software for someone else, it has to be delivered to your application in a way that's performant enough. And so you can see, like, when some companies are down, when they sell and declare in their term of services SLA, standard level agreements, most of the time they have a compensation to be made, right? So when you guarantee 99.99% availability, but you don't respect that for whatever reason, you have to compensate sometimes with customers. But who declares the failure? Who declares who does that? They can say, no, the problem is on your integration, not on us delivering. And we see that many SLAs are actually not enforced on the compensation level because of this question. The solution is maybe one example here pulled by API Metrics, but here like a performance rating agency for APIs, right? So we try to give like some fair, neutral advice about like what's the performance of the APIs to challenge these SLA questions. That is really core of term of services. Another example that has been said by others is to really the API copyright. Copyright is extremely important for everyone because you have to be sure you can use it or not. Do you have the right to use it? But again, in the US, this famous Google versus Oracle, but the fact that things could be copyrightable, at least in some part of the world where it's not fair use, but it's business use, right? Because the Google versus Oracle, that was considered fair use. But the thing here, it's about like when it's not fair use, we could potentially enforce copyright. And it's really important for term of services because it's there. One of the solutions made by Keen Lane and Stephen Wilmot is really to maybe declare your API copyright into the API Commons, right? So like this, you can be sure that the design of your API belongs to the commons and belongs to or the public domain and not can be copyrightable anymore, right? So you can see that we have some problems. We have some part of solutions, but why not a global solution coming? Last but not least, the breaking changes. Some speakers were talking about it previously. Breaking change makes the life of developer a nightmare. When you don't know when an API will be breaking or when you don't get any notice. So you can see sometimes it can be public announcement by email, by whatever, but sometimes you learn it by users when your application is not working anymore. One of the solutions called the API changelog. So a few projects in the past have tried to track API changes from the docs, from the schema definitions, or from the OpenAPI description, whatever. They try to understand and warn developers before breaking changes. But again, it's also about term of services, about like how you guarantee that actually you are fair with your users about the time you can allocate for people to adapt, right? How long you keep versions, how long you keep support for every API versions that you break. Some companies have solutions for that. They even claim their write once run forever policy, that they claim they will support the APIs forever as long as someone is using it. They only will shut it down when nobody's using it anymore. What do? They do like a kind of let's say marketing obsolescence. They just make the new features on the new versions, and so at some point you want the new features, you go to the next version. But at least that's a good way to nudge developers and not to break their APIs. Again, let's go back, but some design patterns like hypermedia APIs can also have clients that don't break when it's a technical solution. But again, just to say there are solutions that can happen. But how to best describe API term of services in a way that's human understandable? That's a big question. That's actually the main question we do in this project first. So we are really in this phase one, trying to understand that. And one idea that I want to explain more here, just one idea of the potential, is to think about the power of Creative Commons pattern. I'm sure you're all familiar with this idea, all these Creative Commons licenses that you see that are simple. So what do Creative Commons? They provide Creative Commons license and public domain tools that give every person a free and simple and standardized way to grant copyright permissions or usage, right? So that's an extremely simple framework. And we can see that, we will see right now, just an example, actually you answer really few questions. Copyright is large. There are a lot of rights into copyright, but at least Creative Commons try to reduce it to a way that's usable at large scale, right? And that you really have to understand that there are a lot more rights attached to copyright, but they try to reduce it to make it understandable by anyone in a few seconds, right? They limit the rights for scalability versus the full application of the right that only lawyers will understand. Because sometimes when you have an opportunity to use something and you will spend more lawyers to know if you can use it, you will not. So reducing the cost of understanding actually enable an ecosystem to happen that will never happen if you have to spend a few $1,000s to know if you can use a picture or whatever. So you can see the questions, like really few questions. Do you allow the adaptation of your work to be shared? Yes, no, or yes, as long as others share alike. Do you allow commercial use of your work? Yes and no. You have to attribute the creator of the thing. And that's it. So for example, if you say yes, if you allow adaptation of your work and commercial use of the work, you have what we call a selected license here, attribution for the international. If you say no, I don't allow adaptation, right? You have to share as it is. It's no the license, attribution, no derivative for the international, and you can see the three logos. So you have the CC for the paternity. Do you allow a commercial use of your work? Yes, and you have the equal for the work has to be shared again like this. If you, for example, if you say yes, as long as others share alike, that's the attribution share alike international. But you understand that it's easy to understand. It's really easy to understand. And if you say no use of commercial work, you can. And again, you can see the logo. And again, that's another license. So we can see that it's easy. They also give HTML tags, or they have specific logos that you can generate directly to make people know exactly what you can do with simple logos, right? So Creative Commons is extremely powerful for that reason. So you can see a lot of combinations here. But again, what we can understand from the most open to the least open is that it's an easy framework. It's as easy to generate, as easy to understand and to read. Right, where nice pictures and logos, again, you learn it in a few minutes, you know all the combinations and you understand everything what you can do, right? So that's really the power of the Creative Commons that really is successful and that enable a lot of people to actually respect copyright because they knew that they were allowed or not to do it when actually you don't see some people just use without giving proper attribution or stuff like that. So that's really the power there. Again, I invite you to know more about this into two books, Cody's Law from Lawrence Lessig and Remix, making art and commerce thrive in the hybrid economy, because each will be reused. Your software will be reused all the time. So be sure that you engage, you understand the API term of services idea behind that. So to make them human readable, we asked the question, how we can build a Creative Commons for API term of services, right? So we're still in the process, but we'll give you some elements we're looking for. So we received a grant. So when 13 projects got for a total of $1.3 million in grant. Everything is an open collective about how we received it, so you can follow. But again, just to say, it's a full 13 project idea about how to make the digital infrastructure more open and more equitable. We've been inspired by one project called the Swedish API license. It has been made in 2012. It was a wizard to create API term of services. You just answer like 12 or 13 questions about termination, IP rights, referencing personal data, and you generate term of services. So we started by this idea, but we wanted to go a little bit more. So we're now at the end of phase one and we're launching to phase two. right now. And few important things to consider compared to Creative Commons. APIs have potentially more degrees of complexity, not just like you can use or not, commercial or not. They engage more elements. APIs sometimes represent really valuable capabilities that can be critical. So sometimes the contract, you need to dive into the contract. And there are technical, product, and legal interface. So it's not just an asset, it's also something with a runtime, so it engages more stuff like that. We found also two ideas, the API neutrality principle, the no gatekeeper policy. So if you allow everybody to use the API in the same way, you are neutral. If you make discrimination between competitors or not, you are not neutral. And the API copyleft idea comes from open source. If I use API with certain clause, represent in the term of services, I need to put this clause in my term of services too. So two new ideas from interviews that we discovered we never thought about. So the thing we at some point we split it into two areas, operational and technical. So operational is really more the business and legal aspect, like revocation policy, business model, reuse of the data, labeling or mention. The technical aspect is really about the breaking change, the service level agreement, the cache policy, deprecation, whatever, and quota and rate limiting. So we try to split into two parts. Just an example about how pricing can be complex. We've seen 11 aspect of pricing, just about how it can be monetized. I don't go there. You will have access to the slide and don't go in full details, but just you can see like the freshness, the flow, precision, the scope, the quantity, the support, the license, branding, just about the pricing. It can be already really complex, so we have to make it a little bit shorter. So to finish, few exploration that we've seen. So on business model, on reuse, on commercial reuse, attribution and trademark, neutrality, copyright, yeah, maybe we can have some elements. It can be free, freemium paying, or free control, no, commercial reuse, free control, no, or whatever. So you can see that we can see a certain degree like understanding, right? But again, that's too many aspects. On other aspect, like a more technical aspect, like revocation, breaking change, minimum 3 months notice, SLAs, cacheability, you can see that okay, we can maybe have some elements of discrete elements to decide, right? But again, you can imagine how to make it simple. And even this is already a big reduction, but we have to make it, to reduce it again, to make it perfect. The storage, do you allow to store the data or not on your servers? For how long? Do you allow to modify the data, right? Or so that's the idea. And again, for a legal aspect, are you liable of the info provided? Is it personal data that you are shared? Is it sensitive data? Is it compliant or not? And at some point, you will be able to see kind of some elements that tell you if yes or no when you consume an API directly. So at some point, the main goal of this is to make a matrix about like what are the decisions, what are the clauses that have a really important impact on decision to consume, and on the other side, the importance. Some are really important but have no really decision to consume, and some make a lot of decision, even they are not really important at first, but they have an important decision on the business level. So we try to understand that, and we hope that in the must-be section we'll have this is the only one we will keep. The last but not least, the end idea of that is that not only to make it human readable, but also machine readable. So there are already some documents that describe APIs and how they behave and work. APIs, the JSON document, or the OpenAPI documents, which is a standard for describing APIs. When we will be able to do the human readable version, to build the machine readable version that describe actually the clause to understand when an API consumes another API, that the clause proliferation or not between users and providers. That's all for me on my time. If you want to contribute, donate, or sponsor, or participate to the study, give feedbacks on a qualitative aspect or quantitative aspect, you can reach us at contact@apitos.org, or you can already subscribe or give some things on opencollective.com/apitos-cc. And now we will have a panel with different panelists to talk about that. Thank you very much, Monica.
Thank you, Mehdi, again for an interesting insights on the project that you're doing on the Creative Commons for APIs. I really look forward to see the next step of it.